Caroline.
I'm Sabrina.
And welcome to Fun and Friends, where we read books and do
Talk.
other friend stuff. I don't know.
Basically, yeah.
Random stuff.
Yeah.
And welcome to today's reading of chapter
3
of Vampire Diaries.
Yes,
Yeah.
welcome.
And, it's good. The right side of the road, an uneasy glance. But that the night was clear and strangely calm, and no breeze stirred the dried brown leaves that were left on the branches. "Keep your eyes out for a crow," she said to Bonnie and Meredith. "A crow?" Meredith said sharply. "Like the crow outside Bonnie's house the night Yang Zi died?" "The night Yang Zi was killed, yes." Elena approached the dark waters of the drowning creek with a rapidly beating heart. Hint. I also said the drive over to the creek. Since when did they get a car?
Yeah, I don't know.
Did they jack a car?
Like borrow their parents' car?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, they're in high school and they have been walking everywhere, and all of a sudden they said the drive to Drowning Creek.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you guys think? Did they steal a car? Steal the parents' car?
They just stole Robert's car. They're like, Robert's asleep. He's not going to be using it. Despite the name, it was not a creek with swiftly flowing water It was not a creek, but a swiftly flowing river with banks of native clay. Above it stood Wickery Bridge, a wooden structure built nearly a century ago. Once it had been strong enough to support wagons. Now it was just a footbridge that nobody used because it was so out of the way. It was a barren, lonely, unfriendly place, Elena thought. Here and there patches of snow lay on the ground. Despite her brave words earlier, Bonnie was hanging back. "Remember the last time we went over this bridge?" she said. Too well, Elena thought. The last time they had crossed it, they were being chased by something from the graveyard. Or someone, she thought. "We're not going over it yet," she said. "First, we've got to get a look under it on this side." "Where the old man was found with his throat torn open?" Meredith muttered as she followed. The car headlights illuminated only a small portion of the bank under the bridge. As Elena stepped out of the narrow wedge of light, she felt a sick thrill of foreboding. Death was waiting, the voice had said. Was death down here? Her feet slipped in the dark, scummy stones. All she could hear was the rushing of water and its hollow echo from the bridge above her head. And through the strained eyes, all she could see was the darkness of the raw river bank. Raw river. Try saying
River Bank.
Try saying that 5 times fast. That's a good
Raw
time.
River Bank. Raw River Bank. Raw River Bank. Raw River Bank. Raw River Bank.
Wow, you did that really well.
I did it well.
It's very hard to say that. I already lost my spot.
Raw River Bank.
Raw River Bank.
Oh, wait.
Raw River Bank.
Oh.
And left trestles of the bridge. "Stefan," she whispered as she was almost glad that the noise of the water drowned her out. She felt like a person calling, "Who's there?" to an empty house, afraid of who might answer. "This isn't right," said Bonnie from behind her. "What do you mean?" Bonnie was looking around, shaking her head slightly, her body taut with concentration. "It feels wrong. For one thing, I don't hear the river before. I didn't hear anything else. It was just dead silence." Elena's heart dropped away in dismay. Part of her knew Bonnie was right, that Stefan wasn't in the wild and lonely place, but part of her too was too scared to listen. "We've got to make sure," she said through the constriction in her chest, and she moved farther into the darkness, feeling her way along because she couldn't see. But at last, she had to admit that there was no sign that any person had recently been there. No sign of a dark head in the water, either. She wiped cold, muddy hands on her jeans. "We can check the other side of the bridge," said Meredith, and Elena nodded mechanically. But she didn't need to see Bonnie's expression to know that what they'd find. This was the wrong place. "Let's just get out of here," she said, climbing through the vegetation towards the wedge of light beyond the bridge. Just as she reached it, Elena froze. Bonnie gasped. "Oh, God." "Get back," hissed Meredith, up the bank. Clearly silhouetted against the car headlights above was a black figure. Elena, staring at the wall.
Could be Damon walking them.
But Damon doesn't want to kill her.
No, but he could taunt her.
Yeah, but it said death would find her there. Oh, that's true, but then again, Damon wants to, change her.
Mm-hmm. And that's like her death.
Okay, that makes sense.
Possibly.
Potentially. Elena staring with a wildly beating heart. She could tell nothing except that it was male. The face in the darkness, but she had a terrible feeling. It was moving towards them. Ducking out of sight, Elena cowered.
Unless it's Tyler.
Could be Tyler.
To get back at them for the haunted house.
Or he's werewolf.
Yeah.
Ducking out of sight, Elena cowered back against the muddy riverbank. Pressing herself as flat as possible, she could feel Bonnie shaking beside her, and Meredith's fingers sank into her arm. They could see nothing from here, but suddenly there was a heavy footfall on the bridge. Scarcely daring to breathe, they clung to one another, faces turned up. The heavy footsteps rang against the wooden planks, moving away from them. Please let them keep going, thought Elena. Oh, please. She sank her teeth into her lip, and then Bonnie whispered softly, her icy hand clutching Elena's. The footsteps were coming back. I should go out there, Elena thought. It's me he wants, not them. He said as much. I should go out there and face him, and maybe he'll let Bonnie and Meredith leave. But the fiery rage that now sustained her that morning was in ashes now. With all of her strength of will, she could not make her hand go to Bonnie's, could not tear herself away. The footsteps sounded right above them, and then there was silence, followed by a slithering sound on the bank. No, thought Elena, her body charged with fear. He was coming down. Bonnie moaned and buried her head against Elena's shoulder, and Elena felt every muscle tense as she saw the movement, legs, feet, appear out of the darkness. No. What are you doing down here? Elena's mind refused to process the information at first. It was still panicking, and she almost screamed as Matt took another step down the bank, peering under the bridge. Elena, what are you doing? He said. Bonnie's head flew up. Meredith's breath exploded with relief. Elena felt as if her knees might give way. Matt, she said. It was all she could manage. Bonnie was more vocal. What do you think you're doing here? She said with raised tones, trying to give us a heart attack? What are you doing out here in this time of night? Matt thrust his hand into his pocket, rattling change. As they emerged from underneath the bridge, he stared over the river. I followed you. You what? Said Elena. Reluctantly, he swung her to face her. I followed you, he repeated, shoulders tense. I figured you'd find a way to get around your aunt and go out again. So I sat in my car across the street and watched your house. Sure enough, you three came climbing out the window, so I followed you here. Elena didn't know what to say. She was angry, of course. He probably did it to keep his promise to Stefan. But the thought of Matt sitting there in his battered old Ford, probably freezing to death, and without any supper, it gave her a strange pang she didn't want to dwell on. Yeah, guilt.
Yeah.
He freaking loves you, and you treat him like garbage.
Can't do that. Can't do that to people.
Yep. Mm-mm. He was looking out at the river again. She stepped closer to him and spoke quietly. I'm sorry, Matt, she said, about the way I acted back at the house, and about... She fumed for a minute and then gave up. About everything, she thought hopelessly. Well, I'm sorry for scaring you just now. He turned back briskly to face her, as if that settled the matter. Now, could you tell me what you think you're doing? Bonnie thought Stefan might be here. Bonnie did not, said Bonnie. Bonnie said right away that this was the wrong place. We're looking for someplace quiet. No noises and closed in. I felt surrounded, she explained to Matt. Matt looked back at her warily as if she might bite. Sure you did, he said. There were rocks around me, but not like these river rocks. Oh no, of course they weren't. He looked sideways at Meredith, who took pity on him. Bonnie had a vision, she said. Matt backed up a little, and Elena could see his profile in the headlights. From his expression, she could tell that he didn't know whether to walk away or round them all up in a cart and take them to the nearest insane asylum. It's no joke, she said. Bonnie's psychic, Matt. I've always said I don't believe that sort of thing, but I've been wrong. You don't know how wrong. Tonight, she turned into Stefan somehow and got a glimpse of where he is. Matt drew in a long breath. I see. Okay. Don't patronize me. I'm not stupid, Matt. And I'm telling you, it's for real. She was there with Stefan. She knew things only he would know, and she saw the place he was trapped in. Trapped? Said Bonnie. That's it. It was definitely nothing open like this river. But there was water. Water up to his neck. His neck. The rock walls covered with thick moss. The water was ice cold and still, and it smelled bad. But what did you see? Elena said. Nothing. It was like being blind. Somehow I knew that if there was the faintest ray of light, I would be able to see. But I couldn't. It was as black as a tomb. As a tomb. Thin chills went through Elena. She thought about the ruined church on the hill above the graveyard. There was a tomb there. A tomb, she thought, that had been opened once. But a tomb wouldn't be all wet, Meredith was saying. No, but I did get the sense that sense of where it could be then. Bonnie said, Stefan wasn't really in his right mind. He was so weak and hurt and so thirsty. Elena opened his mouth to stop Bonnie from going on, but then Matt broke in. I'll tell you what it sounds like to me, he said. The three girls looked at him, standing slightly apart from the group like an eavesdropper. They had almost forgotten about him. Well, said Elena. Exactly, he said. It sounds like a well. Elena blinked, excitement stirring her. Bonnie? It could be, said Bonnie slowly. The size and the walls and everything would be right, but a well is open. I should have been able to see the stars. Not if it was covered, said Matt. A lot of old farmhouses around here have wells that are no longer in use, and some farmers cover them up to make sure the little kids don't fall in. My grandparents do. Elena couldn't contain her excitement any longer. That could be it. It must be it. Bonnie, remember you said that it was always dark there. Yes, and it did have some sort of underground feeling. Bonnie was excited too, but Meredith interrupted with a dry question. How many wells do you think there are in Fell's Church, Matt? Dozens, probably, he said, but covered? Not that many. And if you're suggesting somebody dumped stuff in this one, then it couldn't be any place where people would see it. Probably somewhere abandoned. And his car was found off this road, said Elena. The old Franchier place, said Matt. They all looked from one another. The Franchier farm had been ruined and deserted as far as anybody could remember. It's in the middle of the woods, and the woods had taken it over nearly a century ago. Let's go, added Matt simply. Elena put a hand on his arm. You believe? He looked away. A moment. I don't know what to believe, he said at last, but I'm coming. They split up and took both cars.
So where did they get their car?
Yeah, where did they get their car?
I think they just borrowed one of the adults.
We're just gonna take Robert's car.
Yeah.
Robert doesn't need it, right? We're just gonna take it.
Yep.
They split up and took both cars. Matt with Bonnie in the lead and Meredith following with Elena. Matt took a disused little cart track into the woods until it petered out. From here, we walk, he said. Well, that's what you normally do. I don't know how you have a car now.
Right.
Elena was glad she thought of bringing a rope. They'd need it if Stefan were really in the Franchier well, but if he wasn't, she wouldn't let herself think about that. It was hard enough going through the woods, especially in the dark. The underbrush was thick and the dead branches reached out to snatch them. Moths fluttered around them, brushing Elena's cheek with unseen wings. Eventually they came to a clearing. The foundations of the old house could be seen, building stones tied to the ground, now with weeds and brambles. For the most part, the chimney was still intact, with hollow places where concrete had once held together, like a crumbling monument. The well would be somewhere out back, Matt said. It was Meredith who found it and called the others. They gathered around and looked at the flat, square block of stone almost level with the ground. Matt stooped and examined the dirt and the weeds around it. It's been moved recently, he said. That was when Elena's heart began pounding in earnest. She could feel the reverberating in her throat and her fingertips. Let's get it off, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The stone sled was so heavy that Matt couldn't even shift it. Finally, all four of them pushed, bracing themselves against the ground beneath it, until there was a groan and the block moved a fraction of an inch. Once there was a tiny gap between the stone and the well, Matt used a dead branch to lever the opening, and then pushed it open again. Then there was an aperture large enough for her head and shoulders. Elena bent down, looking in. She was almost afraid to hope. Stefan? Seconds afterwards, hovering over the black opening, looking through the darkness, hearing only the echoes of pebbles, disturbed by her movement, were agonizing. Then incredibly, there was another sound. Who? Elena? Oh, Stefan. The relief made her wild. Yes, I'm here. We're here. We're going to get you out. Are you all right? Are you hurt? The only thing that stopped her from tumbling in herself was Matt grabbing her from behind. Sounds like something hunting. Nobody's awake except for us. It's the ghost. That was rude. Stefan, hang on. We've got rope. Tell me you're all right. It's a ghost. There was a faint, almost unrecognizable sound, but Elena knew what it was. A laugh. Stefan's voice was thready but intelligible. I've been better, he said, but I'm alive. Who's with you? It's me, Matt, said Matt, releasing Elena. He bent over the hole himself. Elena, nearly delirious with elation, noted that he wore a slightly dazed look. And Meredith and Bonnie, but who's going to bend some spoons for us next? We're going to throw you down some rope. That is, unless Bonnie can levitate you out. Still on knees, he turned to look at Bonnie. She slapped the top of his head. Don't joke about that. Get him up. Yes, ma'am, said Matt with a little giddy. Here, Stefan, we're going to have you tie this around you. Yes, said Stefan. He didn't argue about fingers being numb with cold or whether or not they should haul his body way up. There was no other way. The next 15 minutes were awful for Elena. It took the four of them to pull Stefan out. Although Bonnie's main contribution was saying, come on, whenever they paused for breath, but at last Stefan's hands gripped the edge of the hole, and Matt reached forward to grab him under the shoulders. Then Elena was holding him, her arms wrapped around his chest. She could tell just how wrong things were by his unnatural stillness, by the limpness of his body. He used the last of his strength helping to pull himself out. His hands were cut and bloody, but what worried Elena most was the fact that his hands did not return her desperate embrace. When she released him enough to look at him, she saw that his skin was waxen and there were dark shadows under his eyes. His eyes were so cold that it frightened her. She looked up at the others anxiously. Matt's brow was furrowed with concern. We'd better get him to the clinic fast. He needs a doctor. No. The voice was weak and hoarse, and it came from the limp figure Elena cradled. She felt Stefan gather himself, felt himself slowly raise his head, his green eyes fixed with hers, and saw urgency in them. No doctors. His eyes burned into hers. Promise, Elena. Elena's own eyes stung, her vision blurred. I promise, she whispered. Then she felt whatever had been holding him up, the current of sheer willpower and determination, collapse. He slumped in her arms, unconscious.
Now it's chapter 3.
Well, they found Stefan.
Yes, they did. Group effort, I like that though.
Yeah, and apparently Death did not
come find her
at Wickery Ridge. So
this time.
Unless Matt secretly is planning on killing her.
I mean, that would be diabolical.
That would be pretty diabolical.
But I don't think that happens.
I don't think that happens.
I don't think that happens.
So,
well, I'm glad Matt found them and helped them, and they weren't.
I don't think
slaughtered.
they would have been able to get to Stefan in time if he hadn't been there.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed.
I'm hoping that, Alina sees that. You know what I mean?
Sees, what Matt did for them?
Yeah,
have that gratitude.
Because she's,
guilt.
Yeah. Well, it said that she felt a little guilt, but, still, I'm
not
like,
enough.
It's not. He does so much for her, and
he really does. And she just doesn't see it because she's blind with lust for Stefan. Oh, I gotta tell you something that's off camera.
Okay.
It's off camera.
Oh, off camera? Okay.
Yeah, it's a spoiler for this, something that I realized with the help of TikTok. So I'll tell you after.
Wow. You've been doing some TikTok scrolling?
A little bit. Okay, guys, we still have that question that you guys need to answer. Whose face you think is on the diary?
You mean on the
On
cover?
this one. Whose
Whose
face do you
face?
think it is? Put your comments below. We'll collaborate with them.
But
We have our speculations.
should we tell them what we think?
No, because I want them to get involved.
Okay. Once we see a couple of comments, maybe
Then we'll have a
say
little
our opinion.
segment on
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Sounds
anyway,
good.
anyways,
Yeah.
I like that chapter though.
I liked
It
it.
was teamwork, and I liked it. And
Yeah, they worked together really well, and I feel bad for Matt being in his freezing cold car because you know his old ass car is not going to
No
have a
heat.
heater.
no,
Like
it's freezing.
it was not.
and he's probably hungry.
Yeah, because he said that he probably didn't eat
Yeah.
dinner.
Yeah, didn't have dinner. And he's a growing teenage boy. This time change
I mean,
is like
I know.
we lost an hour or so.
We're both like,
Hanging on here.
apparently the ghost didn't like the time change either. He's printing random stuff in my office.
Apparently Casper. And doesn't bother Chewie. Chewie's been asleep like a log.
Yeah, he readjusted himself at the beginning of the book and then was like, okay, this is a good spot. I'm going to lay down right here. And then fell asleep. I'm waiting for him to start snoring. He has the loudest snores. I mean, like, we'll be watching TV and yeah, he'll be like out, like sounding the TV. Like, he'll be like, and we're like trying to turn the volume up even higher to try and like cover up his snores.
How
He's
cute.
so loud.
So cute.
Anyways, back to the book. With that lovely distraction. I'm glad that they didn't leave the killing of Yangtze in the Vampire Diaries in the TV show because I probably would have stopped right there. I'm so against like killing
Animals.
in movies.
Like
I
pets. Pets particular.
Yeah.
I just
I
it breaks
watched
my heart.
11 Monsters last night, and there was a part where like the dog almost died, and I was like, I'm about to turn this off right now.
Oh yeah, I'm like that with Ryan. If we're watching a movie and I know that the dog's gonna die or the dog dies, I tell him like, nope, we're done, shutting this down. I'm not continuing this. No.
It's like I Am Legend. I was like, no.
I bawled in
It
I
was
Am Legend.
So bad, but I'm so glad that they didn't leave that in because I probably wouldn't have finished the TV series if
The doggy got killed.
the doggy got killed. She didn't even have a doggy.
I know, thank God.
Really.
In the TV. Oh, I know we had a couple people comment on how they appreciate how true Damon's character stuck between the book and the TV show, and we both agree with that. I love that Damon's still like this cocky
Oh, I do too.
SOB.
Oh my gosh, yes. I'm hoping, like, I feel like his character's gonna, like, kind of like the TV show will start, like, changing a little bit. Or
Yeah.
at least I'm hoping. Because I'm definitely Team Damon.
Yeah.
I'm definitely Team Damon.
My heart goes out to Stefan because he's just like this lost puppy dog.
Well, I know you're more Team Stefan.
I'm more like my heart goes to Team Stefan, but I'm more like attracted to Damon.
I like cocky guys. I mean, come on, my husband. You know what I mean.
But yeah, like looks wise, I definitely go more for Damon. But like personality,
who doesn't love Ian Somerhalder? Like
the dark hair, the blue eyes, tall.
Yeah.
I mean, it's my type.
Yeah.
I have one.
Dude, I found out today he's like in his 40s.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that. I was like, oh yeah, he's like 30
They were like in
something.
their 30s, like early 30s when they did this TV show. Late 20s.
That makes sense.
They were like,
But he
older
looks
than
like
that.
he doesn't age. Like, maybe they really are vampires.
It could be. Could be. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, I do like Stefan's personality and like how his love is. That's definitely more like what I'm attracted to.
Yeah.
With personalities and stuff, but like look wise, tall, dark hair, blue eyes.
Yep.
That is just
Nice.
yum. And I got one, so I'm so over the moon with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Ryan is like that.
He's tall, has dark hair, Brown hair, blue eyes.
Yep.
Super
You know
cute.
me, I like my blondes, so.
She's always loved her blondies. But
almost every single guy I dated was blonde.
mm-hmm. Mine was. There was only one, and it lasted a week.
I definitely had a type.
Mm-hmm. I have a type. Anyways.
Anyway.
That's a little bit about us. Just so you know.
Alright, well,
Well,
we'll see you guys